There's a secret Jesus knew, a secret Louise Hay unlocked, and a secret modern neuroscience has confirmed. But a secret 99% of men still completely ignore. Have you ever wondered why forgiving feels so hard? Why, even knowing you should, something inside resists? Like forgiving is admitting defeat? Well, what if I told you you're completely wrong about forgiveness? What if forgiveness wasn't about weakness, but about the most brutal power a man can wield? Jesus understood something about the male brain that took 2,000 years for science to discover. Louise Hay cracked the code. And today, you're going to learn exactly how it works. But first, I want you to stop and feel this for a moment. That rage you carry, that resentment festering in your chest, that bitterness you've nurtured for years. You think this makes you stronger. Let me tell you a truth that will hurt. Every moment you refuse to forgive, you are being controlled, manipulated, dominated by the person who hurt you. They live in your head, rent-free. While you think you're being strong, you've actually become their emotional slave. That's not strength, my friend. That's the most subtle prison there is. Jesus knew this. When he spoke of forgiveness, he wasn't asking you to be weak. He was teaching you how to break invisible chains, how to reclaim total control of your emotional life. Louise Hay discovered a specific neurological pattern in men, a pattern that makes forgiveness particularly difficult, but particularly powerful when it finally happens. Want to know what that pattern is? The male brain is neurologically programmed to solve problems through physical action. When someone hurts you, your primitive brain wants to confront, fight, conquer. That's why forgiving feels like giving up the fight. But here's the game-changing twist. Forgiveness isn't giving up the fight. It's winning the final fight, the fight against your own emotional prison. When you forgive, you're not liberating the person who hurt you. You are liberating yourself from their control over you. Jesus understood this power dynamic better than any leader in history. He knew that forgiveness is the supreme act of personal sovereignty. Think about it. Who has more power? The man constantly reacting to the pain of the past, or the man who consciously chooses to transcend that pain? Louise Hay spent decades studying this mechanics. She discovered that men who master forgiveness develop a different presence, a different energy, an emotional authority others feel instantaneously. It's as if they've accessed a level of masculine maturity most men never even know exists. But here's the problem. The specific technique Jesus used and that Louise Hay decoded is completely counterintuitive. It goes against everything you've learned about how a man should handle pain. And that's exactly why it works. Have you noticed how the most respected men in history share a common trait? They didn't hold grudges, not because they were weak, but because they were too smart to let others control their emotional state. Nelson Mandela, Gandhi, Jesus himself. These men understood that forgiveness is a demonstration of strength, not weakness. They knew something you're about to discover. Let me ask you a question that cuts to the chase. How many hours of your life have you wasted thinking about people who hurt you? How many decisions have you made based on anger? How many opportunities have you missed because you were emotionally hijacked by the past? If you add it all up, you'll realize a terrifying truth. You've given years of your life to people who don't deserve 5 minutes of your attention. That's what Louise Hay called an energy drain. You're constantly leaking your life force into wounds that refuse to heal. Jesus had a specific technique to stop this bleeding. And this technique works especially well with the male brain because it redefines forgiveness as an act of power, not submission. But before I reveal that technique, you need to understand why it works. The human brain has a structure called the amygdala. It's your primitive alarm system. When someone hurts you, your amygdala fires and creates a neurological mark, an emotional scar. In men, this scar connects directly to the dominance hierarchy. That's why forgiving feels like losing status. Your primitive brain interprets forgiveness as defeat. But Jesus understood a neuroscientific truth we've only recently discovered. You can reprogram these neural connections. You can literally rewrite your brain's emotional history. Louise Hay discovered there's a specific window where this reprogramming is most effective. A window most men never know because no one teaches them this. This window opens when you stop seeing forgiveness as something you do for the other person and start seeing it as something you do for yourself. It's a subtle shift, but it changes everything. When you forgive someone to relieve the emotional weight you carry, you're not being weak. You're being strategic. You're reclaiming energy that was being wasted. It's like stopping to carry a backpack full of stones you didn't even realize you were carrying. Jesus used a powerful metaphor for this. He talked about letting the dead bury the dead. Translation: stop giving life to your old wounds. Stop feeding emotional ghosts. Louise Hay turned this metaphor into a practical technique. A technique that works with male neurology, not against it. But here's what strikes me most. When you master this technique, something changes in your presence. People feel it. They can't explain it, but they sense you have a different emotional authority. It's as if you've accessed a level of maturity few men achieve. Have you ever met a man like that? A man who's clearly been through hardship, but who doesn't carry bitterness, who doesn't seem to be trying to prove anything to anyone. There's a calmness about them, a quiet confidence, a presence that commands respect effortlessly. These men understood the secret Jesus taught. Forgiveness isn't about the person who hurt you. It's about who you choose to become. And here's the most powerful part. When you truly forgive, you don't just liberate yourself from the past. You become impervious to future attempts at emotional manipulation. Think about this. If someone can't control you through anger, if someone can't manipulate you through guilt, if someone can't emotionally blackmail you, what power does that person really have over you? Zero. Absolute zero. That's why Jesus spoke about forgiveness as a form of spiritual authority. It's not about being nice. It's about being emotionally indestructible. Louise Hay discovered a specific process to achieve this state, a process that works with the way the male brain processes emotions, not against it. But this process has 3 distinct phases, and if you skip any of them, it doesn't work. The first phase is what she called acknowledging the prison. You need to honestly admit that your anger is controlling you, not empowering you. This is tough for men because it challenges our narrative of strength, but it's necessary. You can't escape a prison you don't admit you're in. The second phase is where the magic happens. This is where you apply the specific technique Jesus used, the technique that reprograms your neurological response to pain. And the third phase, is where you become a completely different man. But let me tell you something that will surprise you. The technique Jesus used has nothing to do with turning the other cheek or loving your enemies. Those interpretations completely distorted the original teaching. The real technique is far more practical, far more strategic, and far more powerful. It's a technique that uses male neurology itself as leverage for transformation. Louise Hay tested this technique with thousands of men over decades. The results were always the same. The men who applied it correctly experienced an emotional liberation that literally changed the trajectory of their lives. They stopped reacting. They started responding. They stopped being victims of circumstance. They started becoming creators of their realities. And it all began with understanding a simple truth. You're not being strong when you hold on to resentment. You're being controlled. But when you forgive consciously, strategically, intentionally, you reclaim total control of your emotional life. It's like you finally understand you have the key to your own prison, and you always have. Jesus knew this. Louise Hay decoded this. And now, you are about to experience this. But before I reveal the technique, I need to tell you about the day that changed Louise Hay's life forever. The day she understood that Jesus wasn't talking about religion. He was talking about neuroplasticity. It was 1978. Louise was working with a group of men in a therapy session. They all carried deep trauma, anger that had corroded their souls for decades, relationships destroyed, careers sabotaged, entire lives wasted fueling resentments. And then she had an epiphany. She realized these men didn't have a forgiveness problem. They had a masculine identity problem. They believed that forgiving would diminish them as men. It was in that moment that Louise understood the genius of Jesus. He never asked men to be weak. He was offering a completely new way to be strong. The technique Jesus used has 3 pillars. 3 pillars that work specifically with male neurology. And when you understand these pillars, everything changes. The first pillar is what Louise called recontextualization of power. Stop for a moment, take a deep breath, and listen to me with full attention. You were taught that forgiving is letting someone get away with what they did to you. That's the biggest lie you've ever swallowed about masculinity. Forgiveness isn't about letting someone get away. It's about refusing to be the victim any longer. When you hold on to resentment, you're telling the universe, I am someone who can be hurt and controlled. When you forgive consciously, you're declaring, I am someone who has total sovereignty over my emotional reality. Jesus understood that true masculine strength doesn't come from the ability to react to pain. It comes from the ability to transcend pain. And here's the second pillar, active neural redirection. Your brain is designed to solve problems. When someone hurts you, your brain wants to solve the problem through retaliation. But there's a much smarter way to solve that problem. Instead of spending energy trying to punish whoever hurt you, you redirect that energy into becoming immune to future attempts at manipulation. Louise discovered that men who apply this technique develop what she called emotional shielding. They become literally impervious to attempts at blackmail, manipulation, or emotional control. Imagine having that kind of power. Imagine that no one can knock you off your emotional center anymore. That no word, no action, no attempt at provocation can destabilize you. This isn't insensitivity. This is emotional mastery. And the third pillar is the most powerful, the alchemy of suffering. Jesus taught that suffering doesn't need to be wasted. It can be transformed into wisdom, into strength, into genuine compassion. But here's the secret that few understand. This transformation only happens when you stop identifying as a victim and start seeing yourself as someone being forged through adversity. Louise Hay discovered that there's a specific moment where this alchemy happens, a moment where pain transforms into power, where the wound becomes your greatest strength. This moment happens when you realize that the person who hurt you actually gave you a gift, the gift of your own evolution. Not because what they did was right, but because your response to that pain revealed who you truly are. Now let me teach you how to apply this technique in practice. How Jesus actually did it. The first thing you need to understand is that forgiveness isn't a feeling. It's a decision, a strategic decision based on your own self-interest. You don't forgive because you feel inspired. You forgive because it's the smartest move you can make. Jesus never said you had to feel love for the person who hurt you. He said you had to release the energy you were wasting on them. It's a subtle difference, but it changes everything. Here's exactly how to do it. First, you identify where the anger lives in your body. Yes, in your body. Louise discovered that every unprocessed emotion manifests physically. In men, anger usually resides in the chest, shoulders, or jaw. Put your hand on that spot. Feel the tension. Acknowledge that this tension is consuming your vital energy 24 hours a day. Secondly, you speak directly to this energy, and you speak like a man who's made a business decision. You say, I consciously choose to release this energy because it no longer serves me. I choose to redirect this power to create the life I want. It's not about forgiving the person. It's about reclaiming your energy. Thirdly, and this is crucial, you visualize this energy leaving your body and transforming into golden light. Light that will strengthen your presence, your confidence, your personal authority. Louise Hay discovered that men who do this specific visualization experience an immediate physical release, as if they literally put down a heavy burden. But here's where Jesus' technique becomes truly powerful. He added a fourth step that most modern therapists ignore. He asked the person to send a silent blessing to the one who hurt them, not because they deserve it, but because this blessing completes the energy circuit. It seals the release. When you can genuinely wish well to someone who hurt you, you know you've achieved true emotional freedom. You've completely transcended the victim-aggressor dynamic. But beware, this blessing can't be forced. It only works when it's genuine, and it only becomes genuine when you understand that this person, unconsciously, helped you discover your own strength. Louise tested this technique with thousands of men. The results were always the same. Men who could complete the 4 steps experienced a transformation that others immediately noticed. They stopped being reactive. They started radiating a powerful calmness, a presence that commanded respect effortlessly. But there's a secret within the secret. Something Jesus taught only to his closest disciples. Something Louise discovered after decades. Studying extreme cases of forgiveness, the most powerful forgiveness isn't forgiving the one who hurt you. It's forgiving yourself for allowing yourself to be hurt. This will hit you like lightning. The true prison isn't the anger you feel for the person who hurt you. It's the anger you feel at yourself for not protecting yourself better. It's the shame of having been vulnerable, the guilt of having trusted, the frustration of not seeing the signs. Men carry this kind of self-judgment for decades, and that's what truly destroys them. Not the external betrayal, but the internal betrayal, the violence they inflict upon themselves. Jesus understood that you can't truly forgive others until you forgive yourself, and you can't forgive yourself until you understand that being hurt doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. Louise Hay created a specific protocol for this intimate forgiveness, a protocol that works with the male tendency to judge themselves harshly. You look in the mirror, directly into your own eyes, and you speak as you would to your best friend going through the same situation. You say, I forgive you for trusting. I forgive you for being human. I forgive you for expecting the best from people. That wasn't naivete. It was courage. And then you add the phrase that changes everything. And I promise that from now on, I will protect you better. I will honor your vulnerability instead of judging it. When you can say these words and truly feel them, something breaks inside you. A tension you've carried for years simply dissolves. You realize you no longer need to prove anything to anyone. You no longer need to be invulnerable to be valuable. You no longer need to carry emotional armor that only isolates you. It's in this moment that you understand the true genius of Jesus. He wasn't asking you to be weak. He was teaching you how to be genuinely strong. Genuine strength doesn't come from never being hurt. It comes from being hurt and consciously choosing not to let it define you. Louise Hay noticed that men who master this form of forgiveness develop a different magnetism, a presence that attracts respect, trust, and opportunities. They stop repelling people with their emotional defenses. They begin to attract deeper relationships, stronger partnerships, more authentic connections. And it's all because they learned the secret Jesus taught. Conscious vulnerability is the highest form of masculine courage. But let me tell you about the most surprising effect of this technique. Something Louise observed consistently. But that took years to understand completely. Men who apply this forgiveness technique begin to experience what she called redemptive synchronicities, situations where life seems to conspire to heal exactly the wounds they've released. Relationships that seemed impossible to rebuild heal spontaneously. Opportunities that seemed lost forever resurface. Doors that were closed open. It's as if the universe responds to your decision to forgive by offering new possibilities that were previously blocked by your own energy of resentment. Jesus spoke about this when he said that all things are possible to him who believes. He wasn't talking about religious faith. He was talking about the faith that you can rewrite your emotional history at any time. And here's the deepest part. When you truly master this technique, you stop being a person who needs to forgive. You become a person who is naturally impervious to offense, not because you're insensitive, but because you understand that the way others treat you says more about them than about you, and you refuse to internalize the emotional poison of other people. Louise Hay called this emotional immunity, and she discovered that it's the most attractive trait a man can develop. Women feel this immunity and are magnetically drawn to it. Other men feel it and naturally respect it. Children feel it and feel safe. It's a presence that says, I am someone who cannot be broken by circumstances. I am someone who transforms adversity into wisdom. But here's what fascinates me most about all of this. When you apply this technique completely, you realize you never needed the approval of those who hurt you to feel complete. You stop waiting for them to admit their mistake, apologize, or acknowledge the impact of their actions. You understand that your inner peace doesn't depend on anything external. That's the true liberation, not when the other person changes, but when you realize you never needed them to change for you to be free. Jesus taught that the kingdom of heaven is within you. Louise Hay discovered that this isn't a metaphor. It's neuroscience. When you stop seeking external validation for your inner peace, you literally create an internal state that no external circumstance can disturb. And then, something miraculous happens. You begin to radiate an energy that heals not only you, but everyone around you. You become a force field of emotional stability. Your children grow more secure. Your wife feels more protected. Your coworkers feel calmer in your presence. You become an emotional anchor point for everyone who enters your orbit. This isn't hyperbole. Louise Hay documented these effects for decades. Men who master conscious forgiveness literally change the emotional dynamics of every environment they frequent. They stop creating drama. They start resolving drama. They stop spreading tension. They begin to radiate peace. And the most powerful part? All of this happens naturally. You don't need to try to be an emotional leader. You simply become one because you've released all the energy you were wasting on old resentments. Jesus knew this was true, spiritual power, not external miracles, but the internal transformation that automatically transforms everything around you. Louise Hay proved this isn't mysticism. It's practical psychology applied with surgical precision. And now, you know exactly how to do it. The question remains, will you continue carrying the emotional weight that's sabotaging your life? Or will you finally use the keys that have always been in your hands? Jesus already showed you the path. Louise Hay already decoded the technique. Neuroscience has already confirmed its effectiveness. The only thing missing is your decision. The decision to stop being a prisoner of your own past. The decision to reclaim the power that has always been yours. The decision to become the man you were destined to be. A free man. A strong man. A man who understood that forgiveness isn't about others. It's about you reclaiming your life.